Okay, good morning. This is Richard Hsu, host of Hsu Untied. This morning, I'm really pleased to have with me as my guest David Okano, who's a partner at White and Case. David, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you very much.
So, David, you have one of the more unusual backgrounds I've come across. I see you were a materials or systems engineering major in college. Tell me a little bit about that and what made you decide to go into engineering in the first place.
Well, so I went to a high school in the Northern Virginia area called Thomas Jefferson. It is a magnet school.
Hmm.
And it's an example, I would say, of an instance where I had a very unusual high school where I had positive peer pressure. I got into high school and I would say I was maybe not the most focused person that ever lived, and all my friends were like laser focused on achieving all these kinds of things, and that somewhat rubbed off on me, I think.
Hmm.
But one of the things that was very evident to me is that a lot of my friends had been uh, working with computers, programming, technology from a very young age,
Hmm.
and they were phenomenal at it. And I realized I would never be at their level, no matter how hard I tried.
Hmm.
And so even in high school, I thought, well, what can my comparative advantage be?
Hmm.
What can I bring that maybe these other people can't, because I can't compete with them.
Yeah.
And I realized what it was is I'm not afraid of technology. Look, I'm not the smartest person, but
Hmm.
I can learn stuff. And my mom was an English teacher. I grew up with a dictionary in every room. I
Hmm.
loved reading.
Hmm.
And so I very quickly I realized being a lawyer in the technology field is where potentially I could have an advantage that, my friends did not. And so even in high school, at a tech school, I took 2 English classes my senior year. I
Hmm.
really did a lot of, the liberal arts, and that led me to say, well, I'm going to go be a patent lawyer eventually.
Huh.
And so in college, I started actually in chemical engineering, but as soon as I took thermodynamics, that
Yeah.
was hard. And then that was really hard. And I'm like, you don't want me designing a nuclear power plant. So that after that, I switched to systems engineering, which was more math and computer science, which I felt more
I
it was
see.
possible. I think I could graduate with this degree, where I was not sure if I could make it through chemical engineering. So that's how I got into systems engineering.
Hmm.
And it's systems engineering. A fun fact is not an actually approved engineering degree on the patent bar. So I had to submit all my classes to prove like
Hmm.
I'm a real engineer. I took classes and I graduated with a BS. So that's I really it gave me a good engineering foundation. And ultimately, I would say, although I didn't plan it or know it at the time, I think systems engineering is probably the best prep for being a lawyer, because what it teaches you is how to approach an open-ended problem
Hmm.
and to achieve it in an efficient manner. And that's kind of what my life is today.
Hmm. So are you saying that even in high school you had this idea that you wanted to go into patent law or
That is exactly right.
oh interesting. And
That is
how did you even know about the existence of that in high school?
I mean, there were some people, my friend, truthfully, if you grew up in the Northern Virginia area,
Hmm.
I grew up in Vienna, which is very near Tyson's Corner. A lot of my friends were living in McLean, Great Falls, this area. So many people are lawyers. I think if you look at the statistics in Arlington, Virginia, it might be the highest per capita lawyer
Hmm.
of
Hmm.
anywhere in the
Hmm.
entire country. So
Hmm.
like true, all my friends, their parents were lawyers. Now my parents were not lawyers,
Right.
but I knew what lawyers were. I mean, I knew, I had a very good idea of what people did, because also, Thomas Jefferson was very focused on careers. I
Hmm.
mean, that's the thing, is that I mean, from being a freshman there, you really start to learn about careers and like what are you going to do? Where are you going? I mean, it's like there's no room for fun. You got to like progress. What are you working towards? Um, but so it kind of assaulted the high school environment I went to assaulted me with what's your career path going to
Oh,
be?
that's so interesting. So when you went to undergrad to engineer, you already knew that you were going to use that to become a patent lawyer. You
That is
never.
correct. That
Oh,
is correct.
interesting. Okay, yeah. Well, that's a different focus. So you never thought about working as an engineer or wanted to work as an
I
engineer?
did work as an engineer. So the other thing that I learned is that, you know, assets good, debt bad. It's a very simple concept. Uh, and so what I wanted to do was pay for law school. Now, I would say today that's a lot harder.
Yeah.
But when I went to college, UVA basically paid my entire way.
Yeah.
And I remember, actually, I remember my junior year, I got a TA job and I was making $1,300 a month
Uh-huh.
with basically no taxes. And I felt like the richest person in the world because my rent was like $275 and there's a lot of money left over for beer. I mean, it's just like I felt so wealthy. Um, but in any case, right, school wasn't quite as expensive. And so I put together a plan to come out of law school with no debt because I wanted to do what I wanted to do. And I didn't want debt to control what I wanted to do. So I ended up working for almost 5 years to
Hmm.
save up the money to go to law school.
Hmm.
And I worked at two different places. And then I applied. I think in retrospect, the only thing I would have done differently is maybe taken time off while I was studying for the LSATs because they're pretty hard.
Hmm.
And I was trying to study as well as working full time, which is more,
Hmm.
I think, much more difficult.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Did you
but
like did you
I
like
took the
working as
LSAT.
did you like working as an engineer? What did you think about it?
So it was very interesting. So I had two experiences. The first, I started out at Lockheed Martin.
Okay.
I had to get a security clearance, which was, I would say, no fun. Um, I had someone yelling at me, they're going to ruin my career because if I don't admit to, being involved in a plot to overthrow the US government, which I thought was like the dumbest question in the world. I should not have expressed that to this person. Um, but it, what my job was at Lockheed Martin was to go around to different projects and see why the projects were either over budget or behind schedule.
Okay.
And it was very simple every time. It's like you have a team of 30 people and only 4 people are working. They're doing all the work. And so that was somewhat interesting. And then I became a management consultant at
Mhm.
a firm that helped companies, is a litigation support firm, and we're supporting firms that were suing policyholders for insurance, long-tailed insurance liability. And so we would figure out, do the financial analysis for that, asbestos, because you get exposed and nothing happens, and then 25 years later you come down with mesothelioma, and then you have a year to live. And so it's a very interesting financial model. And
Right.
so those are the two things I did before law school.
Interesting. So when you went to law school, you knew you knew you were going to study patent law. Did you try dabbling in other areas of law just to see if something else grabbed you?
I did actually. I would say my 1L summer, I had several options, and I chose to go to the computer crime in CSIPs is called,
No,
and
interesting.
computer crime and intellectual property section of the DOJ in DC. And there's a lot of Fourth Amendment issues about searches and seizures of computers. Um, you know, there was wiretap stuff. And it was very interesting. And I mean, and truthfully, that's where I learned how to write. The people there were
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
nice. They taught me how to write effectively and well.
Hmm.
And then I ended up my senior year being kind of an assistant to the Commonwealth's attorney in Lynchburg, Virginia.
Hmm.
And so throughout the whole year, once or twice a week, I would go down and they would just give me a stack of cases, and I would try those cases, usually misdemeanors or appeals of misdemeanors in circuit court, because Virginia is a very odd criminal system in that general district court, there's no jeopardy. So if you lose, you can just appeal.
Hmm.
Um, and the case has to basically start over again. But I probably did, maybe probably over 100 cases. And it was a great experience to how to think on your feet, how to be very concise to a judge and understand, like, you're not gonna, you don't want to create this whole theatrical presentation when someone is like gone over the double yellow line for 5 seconds, right? I mean, you have to kind of understand the context of what the criminal violation is. And they weren't giving me murder cases or anything, right? I mostly had the smaller cases. So I had to figure out, how do I make the policeman happy because he's the one who pulled this, made the arrest or whatever.
Right.
But also understand that here's a judge hearing about 40 of these, and what's the best way to present them without irritating the judge. But it was a great experience, and something I really took away from a lot of things that I think helped me today.
So you never worked in private practice through your 2 summers then, it doesn't sound like.
Oh, no, then the second summer is when I said I worked at Kenobi Martins. That's where I was thinking about, I was going to stay in the DC area.
I see.
And then that's when if anyone you've ever been to John Wayne Airport, you get off the plane and it's beautiful. People live here. And I lived in Orange County for over 3 years.
So you obviously have now, chosen the career of being a patent lawyer, a patent litigator, it sounds like. Are you happy with it? Did it fulfill your high school expectations? Was it a perfect marriage of your engineering and your interest in language and English as you talked about?
Yeah, I mean, so the two options I thought I was going to have is, I did also enjoy the criminal, I was thinking, I could be an AUSA. I like being in court. I like, I like the trial presentation. I like the putting together of evidence, and I think I probably could have been happy there too. But I very much enjoy patent law. I like the litigation. I like learning about technologies. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, what I think I bring to the table that's potentially different is that I definitely can understand technology. I know how to, I mean, look, I don't know every technology. Some things are hard. They take me a while, but fortunately for litigation, you have more time to learn it than you would do in, say, some areas of patent law, like prosecution.
Yeah.
But I enjoy the difference in every day. Like, every day, my job is to basically, there's no playbook, especially some of the cases I'm doing, which is not just patent law, but trade secret. There's no playbook at all. And so I have to take all these inputs and decide, what are we going to do to drive our strategy forward, to win? How are we best serving our clients' interests? And, I found that people don't know how to do that generally. And they kind of, go around in circles. And that's what I'm good at. I think about, okay, we're taking this unstructured problem, all these inputs and variables, and I'm going to put it together and put us down a path which is going to lead us to success, hopefully.
What other range of technologies have you worked on? I mean, I'm sure it's been a wide range, but give me a feel for some of them.
So one case I spent a lot of time on was some optical amplifiers. So the reason, what I tell people, the reason why calls to Europe are cheap. You put these big machines on either side of on beaches, on the ocean, and then you send light signals across cables laid on the ocean floor. And initially it was just, almost like Morse code, is on and off, blinking on and off. And that's where you get ones and zeros and bits. But now these things have become so complex and sophisticated that you send waves, and you measure the phase of the wave, and then you flip the phase 90 degrees, and you can measure multiple phases coming in at the same time and increase the capacity. And that's what the patents were related to. And the shape of the waves was kind of the key part of the dispute. And I remember we were using something called MATLAB, and I remember the first time I was deposing an expert, and I was like, well, I looked at the MATLAB graph. I showed it to this expert. I looked at the assumptions. I'm like, well, why'd you put that there? Why is that assumption? And I could see her eyes bug out, because like, this person is like looking at the MATLAB assumptions, and all the other attorneys are typing away. But that's and after that was great, and I got to talk to these basically world experts. in optical amplification technology, which was very interesting.
Hmm.
So that was one very interesting case. I've done um, some of my favorite cases are medical device cases that are
Mm,
smart medical devices. So
mm,
it's not just a lot of medical devices I see. I'm glad we have these. I wouldn't want this on my body or inside my body. But some of them, we worked with a company which made smart prosthetic feet for example, for soldiers who had lost limbs in the Iraq War. And
yeah.
what these feet would do would they would provide like a powered plantar flexion, meaning, push off the ground. They
Yeah.
would sense the terrain and adjust, because if you when you go up and down stairs, your feet change angle so you don't just like topple over.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so these feet were very interesting, in how they worked, how they mimicked the human gait, which it's a fascinating biomechanic
Hmm.
kind of process. It's just taking a step. Taking one step, your body is doing amazing things. So
Yeah.
these
Right.
devices were mimicking that, and then also helping people. I mean, I saw people who basically otherwise would have been in a wheelchair or, not very mobile, put these on, and then they can walk around, and so their whole life was changed. So it's pretty cool to help protect that kind of intellectual property.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Do you think when you deal with clients, do you think clients can tell that you have an engineering background by the way you ask questions or the way you approach the problem?
I think potentially yes. I mean, and sometimes it's an easy tell, because a lot of cases these days, no matter what the technology is, involve source code.
Mm,
And if again, I'm not like the world, like I've taken computer science.
mm,
I know how to read code, and so someone who knows how to read code
mm.
is going to approach a case a lot differently, and they're not, they're going to say like, we can look at this, we can do this. It's just, I can immediately tell almost when you're taking a patent case, if the attorney is basically going to get eyes glazed over when source code comes up, or if someone who knows code is like, okay, well, let's look at this, let's figure
Yeah,
this
right,
out.
right.
The approach for someone who is scared or not scared of code, I would say, to patent cases is a very easy tell. And
Yeah,
maybe clients can figure that out, maybe they don't, but I mean, they can look at the degrees as well.
yeah.
What I hope they see is that we provide a very um, not loosey goosey, not in the clouds, but a very focused way to address their problem. And,
Yeah,
and that's what I hope comes across from being an engineer. That's what I learned, is that at the heart of every legal issue, there's a business problem.
yeah, yeah,
And there is a way where you can address that in a very methodical manner. And that, I think that's hopefully what the clients can see.
yeah. That's pretty cool. Do you ever reflect on the fact that your career has been so well planned since such a young age and it's all kind of fallen into place? Like, do you ever kind of think about, how well that was planned by you?
Well, I'm just lucky, right? I mean, there's so many things that happen that are out of, you try to, obviously you work hard, you try to take care of the things within your control.
Right.
And a lot of things happen by fortune. I mean, I would say I am very uh I understand when, especially young associates have is potential, difficulties transitioning to the workforce. I mean, one thing that happened, that an unintended effect of me working first, is that I was not necessarily the most mature person coming out of college, but I had time to kind of work through that in a less pressured environment.
Yeah.
Whereas, a lot of people going right through law school and then they're billing a client hundreds and hundreds of dollars an hour, there's not a whole lot of time to be irresponsible.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
and so I was able to get some of that out, and I think that helped me be successful. I mean, you know, I look back at it as just being fortunate. I mean, there's things I certainly have controlled myself. I mean, I definitely work hard, try to do my best, but that doesn't, sometimes you're given boosts and things happen in unexpected ways. And I mean, I clerked at the federal circuit, and I never thought I would clerk.
mm, mm,
And it just happened that when Judge Chen became clerk, he asked the managing partner of Kenobi Martins, the firm I was working at, that he wanted a clerk, and they presented me as one option.
mm.
I mean, and that was I think that obviously gave a big boost to my career, and that's definitely something I had, very little control over, that occurring.
Yeah, yeah. Well, David, it's been a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's a great story, and I love how you followed a path that you mapped out so early in your life.
Well, thank you very much. And to be fair, if I really, my first thing that I really want to do is be a baseball player. So that didn't really work out. So, but beyond that, you're right. It is a very, maybe more early than other people.
Very good. Well, thanks so much. This is Richard Hsu and David Okano. Thanks.